So today I thought I'd do a little, some thoughts, a little video of, it's related to gardening, but about community development. Because I think a lot of people, they don't, think in these terms because they're not educated in that field. So neither am I. I'm not an expert. But if you have imagine having a new subdivision, right? So what you have with a new subdivision is you have the extensive, the geographical location of where the community is, right? There's a geographical area. Now, it's not really set in stone, it's approximation. And so when you have a new subdivision, nobody knows each other in that community, right? So it's the social interactions of the people that live in an area that create the sense of community, right? And that can take a long time to develop, especially when people are busy with life. It's not easy. So the reason I'm talking about this is because I think our community, our collective, the people that live around here, we're at a stage where it's like we've become a developing community, much like developing countries, but this is at a micro scale. And there's probably a bunch of reasons that you could list why. Now, one of the reasons why is this area used to be cottage country, like 100% cottage country. And then over the last, it's hard to really say 30 years, slowly but surely, most of these places become more permanent residents. And the driving factor of that was partially due to affordability, because these were old cottages and you could pick them up pretty cheaply, right? And it has a demographic impact. So our community, we have a local beach down there, and this has been an integral part of our community since the beginning of time. Everyone knows what's going on. But so there's a group of cottagers over the years that, acted as stewards, like stewardship. And through this stewardship and through this group setting, they, created a community. And for the most part, I think it was pretty good. The high point, I would say, would have been like the golden age, I call it, would have been probably 40 years ago. So it's been in decline for that long, right? That's a function of the reproductive rates of all the families and children that came around. So what's happening now is that a lot of the elders, I call it the burning embers of the past, they're on their last legs, right? And so the community is changing rapidly. So what ended up happening is that you had the cottagers, that's one group. Think of it as a tribe or a faction in the area, right? And then you had another group of people that were like I would say it's like the outsiders. I mean, that's the only way to really put it, right? Because they didn't really necessarily connect socially at the same level as a lot of people did, right? So you had basically two kind of groups. One group was much more connected through history, and people that didn't connect as much, right? So, and as a consequence of that, there's a social atmosphere that's surrounded it. You do have a bit of them versus us mentality going on. Not too bad, but it exists. And then you have like basically the insiders and kind of like the outsiders that exist. So what's happening is that the cottagers, they're disappearing, right? They're aged out. So now you're left with this kind of like unrepresented group of people, the outsiders, right? They never connected in the same way the cottagers did, right? So it's like just a group of people that aren't really represented in a way. They're not connected. They don't have that. There's a group that the others enjoyed, like my family as well, or we can 4 generations. So why I'm talking about this is because I've done a community garden down here, right? And now one of the things that happened with the cottagers is they didn't come up to the cottage to have your typical kitchen gardens. So for many years, which is a huge percentage of the population around here, was cottagers. So they didn't come up and do their kitchen gardens, you see. So that the gardening lifestyle that most people would have in older communities, permanent resident communities, doesn't really exist here as much. There's a few, but that's going to be rapidly changing, because as new people move in, some of them might like it, some of them might not, but that's fine either way. But it's still promoting a healthy activity. It's a good direction to go into. So as our community changes, like, you have to try to perceive, what you can do to kind of help keep things kind of connected, right? Because a lot of people aren't, especially a new person. As soon as you move in here, you're an outsider. Automatically, you're an outsider compared to the old group of people, right? And there's a whole bunch of reasons why you don't feel like you want to even bother with these old people, because it's just not you're not related, you don't know them, they're strangers to you. You don't even want to get involved, right? And that's totally understandable. Like, do you want to hang out with a 95-year-old people sitting there? No, you want to hang out with people your own age and your own activities, right? So there's that reason. But things are changing, and so when you have to think about the demographics of the area, who these people are, where they're coming from, are they permanent residents, do they have kids, do they have family, how many kids are there? Like, there's all these things that you have to take into account to understand the community as a whole. People that like dogs, people that don't like dogs, people that are okay with dogs. Off-leash dog problems exists, right? But why I'm saying this about gardening is because there's a huge void in that area, and hopefully the community garden effort will help kind of bring that, back to a reality that's good. It's good for everybody, but you gotta be an enthusiast to appreciate it and to understand it. Because if you never gardened in your life, you just don't get it. Like, you gotta, that's the way it is. So that's why we're a developing community. We're a developing community because the existing community is disappearing, and the people that exist are not connected very well, right? And that includes new people. So the social structure of the community is basically is being wiped out by time, right? And it's in decline. So you need efforts in some kind of way to kind of, do things to kind of breathe life back into the community in that way, right? And a lot of people connect on their own. It's happening, but our green space is pretty unique. It is pretty unique to have that little green space. It's people fight about the silliest things about it all the time, but I mean, that's the primary intended purpose of that road end, is to serve the residents of the direct vicinity. See, it's not to serve people that are like living in Mexico, right? This is access for the people that live in the community, right? And our community is loosely defined by a geographical area. I don't think you could put an exact line around it, but you get a rough line. And people interact with it differently. So there's a pretty interesting and unique demographic kind of social structure that exists here that most people are completely oblivious to. I mean, if you don't even know what demographics is, then how could you see with any clarity, right? Anyways, have a good day.